Here we are with the Fashion Grey 991 GT3. We're going to go over some of the challenges, some of the things that are kind of cool about the full custom aspects of the advanced wrap we do, as well as things that I'm going to pick on our own work and show you some reasons why it takes as long as it takes. It's not a really super brief process to do the advanced wrap. There's a lot of quality holds through the process. And I am using my Panasonic GH5S, and the autofocus is a little wonky. If I notice it's having a hard time, I'll go ahead and just move it to manual focus. So please forgive me if there are some hiccups here. We'll start with the engine lid. Now what this engine lid got, it was disassembled, as you can see here. Wing is off. The film is not complete. And I've got lots of notes. How this engine lid, how I do it, I don't like the pre-cuts, even modified pre-cuts for it, because it's just unattractive. The coverage isn't where I feel like it should be. If we take a look here, there is, when I'm complete coverage with PPF for all of the exposed paint. The area where there's not going to be PPF coverage is just inside this tiny lip where the cover is going to be covering over it anyways, or the intakes will. Over the years, I've done these a number of different ways. One of them was wrapping the film into the crevice here. In my experience, when you wrap it in there, it's probably going to pop because the quality of the paint inside on that tiny little lip there is just not there. I'm going to move this to manual focus. Let's see if we can get this a little tighter here. There we go. The quality of the paint inside those crevices, it just is not there. The way I do it now is just wrap it to the edge. You have to do this, these engine lids, in a number of sections. There's one for the middle. Let me see if I can hold this and show you at the same time. There's one from essentially, yes, you can see it, from here over, and that mimics here. And it follows up to this line right here. And then it's seamed right on the corner, the length here. So you can see I put a little note. It says it's seamed. That helps me focus. But you can see the seam for the back section, which is actually, well, let's stick with this. The seam for the two sections is right there, and it goes to this corner. You can see where I have not finished it all the way down. I've got some overlapping film. That's normal. I have to have it overlap so that I can trim it in a way that the seam is very difficult to see. And where that film is hanging loose, it's going to be trimmed back like this side. You can see that's our final trim for these two sections. Let me see if I can bring this around here. Right there. There is not film installed here yet. The film will go from here to here to here, here, and it'll patch in this tiny little section. What we have is It's a single piece from in here wrapping around to about 1.5 inches to the backside, so it's seamless going around this way. And when the wing goes on, you won't see it, of course. And it comes down to here, goes around back to the bottom. You can see I have not trimmed this top section completely yet, but it's going to be trimmed so that it tabs over and folds to that back edge. The film, once finally trimmed, let me get this angled up. It's going to be trimmed all the way to the edge, and then it repeats over here all the same. One section to wrapping around, and then there's a section that goes from here for the base all the way around to the other side. You may or may not, I tried to set the light up as critically as I could. You really do have to hunt to find the line. The tolerances are very tight here. I do believe, this is my favorite way to do it. I've done these a number of ways, and I feel like this gets us the best coverage, the best fit and finish, and it's most likely to stay. The pre-cuts, again, I'm just gonna, if somebody else likes pre-cuts, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but my 2 cents is that the only way to do these engine lids is full custom. You can see right here, talking about the edge work, and wherever the panel bends in and the film goes over that corner, the film wants to compress. Or you must compress film, or you either stretch it further away, but when you stretch far away and then you trim, you typically have little fingers, frayed edges. And really the best way to wrap edges is with the film in the most relaxed state possible. So when you have an edge like this, 2 edges, where you see the angle here, and it wraps over, again, you're asking it to compress. It doesn't like that. And it's a bit of a limiting factor to how much you can wrap. The same thing happens up here in this area, and the same thing on the rear quarter in here. I'll show you. But let's go ahead and get this up. It is still possible to make it look nice. Certainly when it's closed, it's going to look really great. But even when opened, let's take a look at the underside here. Still, it's going to look really nice. While it's open, let's take a look-see here. And how am I going to have to do this? Let's do this. We're going to let this down a little so I can point it out. As I mentioned, right here, and I'm going to open this up so we can see it, we're asking a lot of compression of the film. This gets wrapped. I let it stay for, oh gosh, I typically like to let this stay. Let's see if I can get this focused in here. I'm gonna have to make some adjustments here. Please be patient with me. There we go. You should be able to see that corner in there right next to the tape. Once it's trimmed back, obviously there's not going to be any frayed bits, but it's been given days to sit at this state and have a pretty good success rate with how it behaves once it has sat at a state for a number of days. We'll step up to this guy next. Here we go. All right. Every car is a little different. The paint on every car is a little different. When you get to paint on not painting on, but when you get to the paint that's on certain spots like corners, there can be a limiting factor just in how the paint, how good the paint is. And good paint for PPF and asking a ton of it is different than good paint from the manufacturer for the sake of just giving their customers good paint. I intentionally left this one in a needing to be trimmed state, and I'm talking about this edge. You should be able to make out how it's got the finest little bit of lift to it. But when we come over here to the opposite corner here, it's laying down. Whatever's on one side, whichever, the bottleneck for fit and finish on PPF, because you want a symmetrical installation where left and right side looks as close to the same as possible. This would be a limiting factor. Even if this one over here played nicer and stuck better, and we were able to cap it in a way that I felt confident that it was going to stay and the paint was going to like it, I still would have to trim back that side to match this one. When it's all buttoned up, closed up, I mean, right now the camera is less than 12 inches from the car. I'm going to step 2 feet away. Let's get it back in focus. Right there. In an eye level to somebody who's 5'10", you'll see it looks, I mean, really, really nice. In that way, just because it's not being wrapped, capped off all the way on that corner, that doesn't mean that it's not going to look nice. That just means that it needs, we need to trim the other side back. We just need that symmetrical look to it. I'm gonna have to turn the camera off here just for a second. One of my batteries is going dead. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. At any rate, the point is, the only way to really know how the film is gonna behave in absolute terms is with time. You don't just install it and kick it out the same day or the next day when it comes to custom wrapping. You can, but you're going to end up with more popped film. You can say with a measure of confidence, I feel pretty certain it will behave a certain way, but there's no telling until you're there. We'll step down to the corner of the bumper here, and this is another one of those areas where just the paint itself, it's a fine paint job. It's a totally adequate fine paint job for the caliber car it is. And yet there are limitations. You may be able to see that little bit of frayed area from here to here. And that's where the film's wrapped all the way over. And this is for both sides, and it's pretty common that the film does not like to stick in these areas. I'm being super, super picky here because once I notch out this direction and trim that off, I mean, it's never going to go any further. But as you can see, if you leave it where it's frayed, it's going to start making its way back and back and back. And in that way, that has to be trimmed. If you're familiar with these cars, you know that it's pretty common that they have little chips, paint chips, where the corner of the tail lights. I think it's just where it rubs. The best way to install tail lights is to have them just off of the surface by just a bit, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, and that way it doesn't rub and it doesn't look any different. Both sides on this bumper here have paint chips. Where there's a paint chip like that and there's a lot of stretch and you need the vacuum to go in, it can create some headaches when it comes to wrapping and maintaining a vacuum. Right here, we're going to take a look in this area. Can you see between the tape and that black section, the PPF on the bumper is just a tick longer. I mean, and it's only for a, I can't see it from here. If I remember right, it's an inch or two where that film is just a tick long. That must be trimmed back before we can reinstall the taillight. The reason is, and there's gonna be dust on here. The reason is wherever you have the PPF execute, to maintain a vacuum, it must be offset. It can't be overhanging and up. As you'll notice from here all the way down to the tape, that PPF executes just on the smooth side before it begins to overhang. That's really important. This is one of those hidden areas where if you don't do it a certain way, it's gonna make a mess. With the advanced wrap, of course, we cap off and wrap between every panel we practically can. I'm speaking in general terms, of course. And you can see on the rear quarter section, more so than the bumper, if I remember right, the bumper is still playing nice everywhere, but the rear quarter section, right here under the tape, it's just barely frayed back there. It's not time to trim it back yet. It's gonna need another day or two of me babysitting it. I've got a few techniques to ask the most out of it without slopping, adhesive promoter or something in there, which I would not recommend someone do. But if ultimately the film does not want to play nice in there, then it's gonna have to be trimmed back just a little bit. The only alternative to that is to just do a pretty basic install and trim it very much to the face, kind of like where my nail is, or just deal with what the pre-cut looks like. This car had a number of thousand miles on it. Actually, the film we're doing this visit, the only film we're installing this visit are the full rear quarters, the engine lid, and the rear bumper. We did do the doors as well as the roof, another visit, but everything else on this car, somebody else had installed. The owner purchased it with film on the full front and the mirrors. As you can see here, I want to make sure folks know that's not what we do with our install right there on that front quarter at the bottom. But this door actually got some advanced aspects without the full advanced wrap. He wanted the pre-cut for the doors, and that means we were able to keep the mirrors in place. Again, we did not install the film on those mirrors. And with the pre-cuts, of course, you're gonna have larger tolerances than if we disassemble, take the handle off, take the mirror stem off. You can see here, let's get us back in focus, and I'm gonna get super picky. You can see right here, the tolerances for the pre-cut, they're just popping out. Now, again, when you're just operating around the car and not being super picky about it, it doesn't look awful, just like those front quarters don't look absolutely awful right there, though I would ideally want that to have better coverage, ideally even with a pre-cut, full-on standard pre-cut, because it's gonna get beat up over time. But we did remove that top trim piece before the full door went on. And that was so that we could have it seamless right there at the very top. Let's go back to the rear bumper, get that buttoned up. It had been driven, it had been enjoyed. There was missing paint inside, right where that arrow is pointing to. There are times to do touch-ups, there are times not to do touch-ups. This wasn't really an appropriate time to do touch-ups. If you want to get into that, leave a comment and I'll explain why. I'll keep this video a little bit shorter by not digging into the nuances of every single thing, but right here, the tolerances are really good, but I don't like that sharp corner of PPF right there on the corner, because what will happen is as it's being washed over time, it's more likely to snag and pull back. And that's why I don't like sharp corners on film, if at all possible. A rounded corner is always better. It's aesthetically, it's a bit more pleasing, and it's more difficult to snag up. As demonstrated right here, where the relief is, and the relief for the rear bumper goes like this, in this way, and it caps over, more dust. But where those trimmed, where I trimmed to the end, I like to round those off. Just looks a lot better than where just the blade executes. And then same here. And the camera is a foot away right here. And it's about, well, it's level with the bumper, so about maybe 18 inches off the ground. For all intents and purposes, you cannot see it. You cannot see it. I'm trying to tell somebody else to kind of stay out of the shot for now. Get this in focus from, let's get to 3 feet away. And 5'10". So it looks good. I'm satisfied with it. I'm a pretty picky fella. Full custom rear bumper, of course. The badges will go back on. There will not be a seam around each one of those emblems. There was trash in this paint. There's not trash between the film and the paint. I mean trash in the paint on this car. There was a little bit in this section right here, just a few select spots. Let me get over here. There were a couple here, and you do have to hunt to find them, but they are there, and I think there was one somewhere in here. The spots down here, these were scuffs from, that's not trash under the film. The film goes right up and around here. That was not trash. That's where the license plate had been scuffing. Same up there in that top left corner. And then when we talk about practical limitations, I mean, this is all one piece. It's not cut through there. There is no film just right here. It's not that we couldn't install it there. It's that there's a point where, I mean, hey, if somebody wants to pay me for it, I'll put it in there, but that would not be covered under normal conditions. Let's see here. Okay, so the dust nibs and trash, there was some easy to spot stuff right here. Take a look, let me get this in focus. Right there, there's a dust nib. I'm hoping I'm capturing it. And then there were 2 black specks. Again, I'm being pretty particular about this. One above and one below that tape. So even with even if we could do a perfect PPF wrap, there's still imperfect paint to deal with. This is the state that all the film around the rear quarter window and going up and over the A-pillar, it's all in this state. I'm swapping hands here. This rig is mighty, mighty heavy. There we go, get you in focus. This is the state I want that film in before I do the final trim out around this section. Hopefully you can see how tight we have it tucked in there, and it's dry, it's playing nice, it's behaving. And in that way, I can rely on, when I trim it back, ignore the stuff that hasn't been wiped off. When I do go to trim it back, we're gonna have super tight tolerances. We do cap the film over with the full advanced wraps. We cap the film over between the windshield trim and the paint. Same as with the roof. Wherever possible, We wrap it between that seal. You can see on the roof side, it is not wrapped. And on the pillar side, the right side of that black trim, it is wrapped. That was merely due to the roof side. The tolerances were not there to snug the film in and have it look nice. So it was necessary to trim that back. For this car, we did do a 20 mil thick section, kind of like shark fins. No, the film itself is not an attractive film. It's 20 mils thick. It's gonna age quicker. It's not a top coated film, so it doesn't have the same chemical resistance as PPF. But let's think about it. If you have a 911, specifically a 991, you know how bad these areas get beat up between the door handle and the wheel arch. This is a wear and tear section to protect that wildly expensive full rear quarter piece of film. It's a bit of it's planning for an exit strategy. If you go to sell the car, you can strip that off and you have beautiful film there. The factory shark fins, the tolerance is it doesn't go all the way to the forward facing edge here. There's a little bit of a gap and it gets beat up all the way around the factory section. So I made something a bit more significant here. And they work very well. That plays very nice. Our edge work and wrapping here looks as it needs to look. We do pull the, in this case, we pulled the trim off of the bottom and wrapped under. And then the trim will go back on those rocker pieces. Anybody that's done PPF or had it installed, this edge right here, it's very challenging to get that to have a perfect vacuum. Literally, you can't get a perfect vacuum. You can get a nice looking vacuum. I'd consider this a very nice looking vacuum. It's not a perfect one. You're not going to get it. Just like on the textured section below, you're not going to get that completely free of any bubbles. Now, what it will do is it will look super nice. It's protected. It's doing what it's supposed to do. If you want a perfect vacuum, then you don't have a vacuum. You do two separate sections here. You do one for the textured and then one for the whole rear quarter. There is a bubble in here. Here you go. Should be able to see that. Those kinds of things are taken care of. I don't want a single bubble in a job when it leaves. If something shows up after the fact, well, it is what it is. We'll take care of it. But I do everything I practically can to make sure there are no bubbles. With the advanced, of course, capping between the capping the top of the rocker panel into the front fender area. This car had been driven, so the paint is not perfect. Let me get the focus to play nice. The paint is not perfect in here, and I have not finished this out. I'm showing off a non-completed job, but one where it's nearing completion. And in that way, there's definitely some stuff to trim up. Obviously, the inside, the outside, inside, yeah, we'll call it the inside edge. I just started it back here, but it still needs to be trimmed all the way down. And then there's a little bit more trim work to do in here. There is texture in here. It's actually quite a fickle area to get consistent wrapping on where it will stay down in that little gap. So living with us for a few days is definitely very helpful. Oh, let's see here. So this is another spot. I'm gonna have to adjust some stuff. Hang on. I'm so sorry. Let's move our focus a lot closer. There we go. On the corner of the A-pillar here, I'm sure you can see the film. Still needs to be trimmed back in there. Living with us for days beyond the initial installation really allows us to see how it's going to behave over time. And I mean, there could still be areas that pop over time, but again, we're talking about doing everything we practically can do to move it back to autofocus. Are you going to play nice for me or not? Boop. Yeah, so this is, and you know, maybe you notice some other things through the video. Feel free to ask any questions. If you have any, you can ask them below in the comment section or send me an email if you have a question about anything else. But for being a car that was not brand new when it came to us, I mean, I'm satisfied with this caliber installation for an advanced wrap. The tolerances are on point. The fit and finish is where I feel like it's, you know, I'm satisfied. If the paint didn't have some of the defects that it had, we could have it look a little bit nicer. But by and large, I mean, I'm happy with this. I'm happy with how that's coming out. You can see here on this side. Are you gonna get in focus? Is it looking good in there? I don't know. I just saw the other side and taped it and said, let's pick on it a little bit. So, yeah, anyways, I appreciate you guys watching the video. These are some of the things that I face day to day, and really specifically as we're starting to come to a close on a project. These are the things that can, you know, on a full custom wrap, full advanced wrap, I could literally go around a car that has film at a 98, 99% completed point, and I could spend a day and a half to 2 days just trimming, tucking, giving attention to, I mean, think about how many edges and corners are there on a car like this, and it's not a gigantic car. So again, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good one. See you around.